Hello! It's really great to be here today, so thanks for the invitation and let's start. Automated tests as quality pipeline data feed. So basically, how to reuse current automated tests for different purposes. Just a few words about me. I'm Tomasz Konieczny, I currently work for RAW as a senior QA engineer, and I'm mainly responsible for test architecture and infrastructure. And just to clarify, by automated tests I mean these high-level end-to-end tests that are mainly used for regression purposes. So I would say typical functional tests, because that's their main goal, to confirm a specific functionalities works as expected, to confirm if we actually deliver business value. And what about this non-functional part? Well, let's start with data we already have, for example, test artifacts, execution logs or logs from test runner, screenshots in case of failure, application logs, so from front-end application, back-end application, and also infrastructure. What I quite often do is to extend it with one more thing, so HRR files or HTTP archive. That's basically the huge JSON file that contains every single request from the browser to the application. And it can be great for debugging purposes, so we can basically drag and drop this file in Chrome browser DevTools network tab, and we'll get exactly the same that we would have normally in the browser. It's really useful for debugging purposes. We can even extend the CI process with some HIR viewing libraries. So we would get this out directly in the report from CI. How to get these files? Well, it's really simple. We can just use the proxy, like for example browser mob or the current fork browser app. And we basically have to start this proxy, start logging before the test execution, for example in some before actions, and finish it after the test is executed in some after actions. And we would get HRR files, and we can save it with other build artifacts. But what about this non-functional part? I would say it's all about reusability, to reuse things that we already have. And I will show you today two different examples, but it's all about creativity. You'll probably find a few more. So let's start with API performance tests. What's definitely useless is the overall execution time of end-to-end tests, because during the execution of end-to-end tests we spend most of the time on the rendering part in the browser, so it's completely useless for providing API requests. But what we can do is to use HIR files that we already have as a data source and just extract data that we need. So I will show you briefly internal structure of these HIR files. So it's basically some metadata about software that created it, and then we have something like entries, so it's basically a huge array of requests with corresponding responses. So we have, for example, start date time, when the execution was started, time, so how long it took to get the response, and then we have the request, so method get in this case, and URL, endpoint cart, action show. So it basically shows the shopping cart in one of the online shops. Then we have things like cookies, headers, query string, post data, etc. But it's not really needed for like performance profiling. But we can extract just anything from this file that we may need. Then we have corresponding responses, so status, 200 in this case, and again, like cookies, headers, content, and things like that. And in the end, we have also specific timings, so not only we have the complete one, but we can also check the specific ones. And in this example, we have the get request, and if we would have, like for example, post, it would be more complex. And the idea is really simple: to create a list of the endpoints that we want to profile, and then we can filter this JSON file. We can extract data that we need, or execution times, and aggregate it. And we can then count some metrics that we may need. Which metrics? I would say exactly the same that in case of classic standard performance tests. So for example, response times like minimum, maximum, average, at least if anyone is average, percentiles, and also some information about failures. We can even extend it with some infrastructure related things like resource usage. And it would give us end-to-end performance tests, because we won't need to try to imitate user flow as in the case of classic performance tests. We won't need to design them. We would just have the proper user flow, and we can just extract data directly from it. So we won't even need any additional tests here. And the second example is about security tests. So how we can reuse things that we already have for security purposes. And it will be based by example of OWASP ZAP tool. That's the great open source security scanner that can detect possible vulnerabilities in web applications. And we can use OpenAPI or Swagger documentation as input for this tool. But we can also use HIR files. We can use HIR to OpenAPI converter. We can convert these files that we would already have from the automated tests, and we can use it as input. We can even extend it with OpenAPI documentation. We also have it. Would it result in like automated security tests? I would say like semi-automated, because that's how these automated security scanners work. They detect possible problems, and we would need to classify if the specific one is real true positive or vulnerability, or if it's just the false positive. So we would probably need to update the list of false positive that should be ignored. But it would be always up to date, because just after the execution of functional tests, we can create one more step in the quality pipeline, so execution of this security test. And we would get the up-to-date result like every single time. And in the end, I will say just one more thing. It's all about thinking outside of the box and reusing things that we already have. Because sometimes we don't even need any additional tests, it's just about extracting data that we already have. And that's the easiest way to really speed up the delivery, to make things simpler. And delivery should be our main goal. I mean, that's the goal of software development in general, to deliver business value. And it would be all. I hope you enjoyed the presentation, and thanks.